because a lot of the guys that we're training here, even this year at D1, these are more like late round free agent type players. And I'll never forget what you told me is like, hey, we want to train those guys that just want to get a phone call and get invited to camp. And the reason we love those kind of guys is because they're so thankful. They train with gratitude. They're humble. They're hardworking. And we know that some of these guys are going to have a testimony. They're going to have a story about draft day. And, you know, they're going to come back one day and talk to our draft prospects that are training at D1.
That's awesome. I get fired up. I was one of those guys just hoping for that phone call, you know.
Level up. Hey, level up. Yeah, cause I'm getting louder. Hey, level up.
Welcome to the Turf, powered by D1. I'm Will Bartholomew, the founder and CEO, and I am so excited to have Clif Marshall with us. Clif was a strength coach with the Cincinnati Bengals, Xavier, Dayton, Louisville, and most recently the Indiana Hoosiers. And man, we are fired up to talk to him about all things training. He currently serves as the director of coaching and elite athletes here at D1. And man, we are fired up. Welcome to the Turf.
Yeah, thank you, Will. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Going?
Doing great, man. I'm so honored and humbled to be here.
Man, we're fired up to have you. I would love just to start out with your journey as a strength coach. I think you got a lot of parents, you got a lot of coaches out there listening to this, and you've had an amazing journey. I don't know if I would love to just go back to the beginning and go, when were you like, this is what I want to do?
Well, it's interesting. Senior night of my high school football career, I told the audience that I wanted to graduate college and to be a strength and conditioning coach. So I knew at 17 years old, I love fitness. I had a passion for it, and I knew I wanted to do that as a career. So every day I show up to work, I truly feel like I'm living out my passion. And so I got started at the University of Louisville as a student assistant. I walked in the weight room one day, I told the head strength coach, like, I want to do what you do. And I said, in order to do that, I'll take out the trash, I'll mop the floors, I'll do whatever possible if you just give me an opportunity. And thankfully he did that. And I stayed with Louisville up until I got my master's degree. And at 23 years old, I got a job in the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals. And man, I was living a dream. I grew up rooting for the Bengals, and now I'm walking the sidelines at 23 years old in these NFL stadiums. And after that, the Lord called me to the private sector, launched a NFL combine training business called Ignition in Cincinnati with the help of the Arrington family. And I stayed there for a decade and trained hundreds of pro athletes for the NFL combine. As I was doing that, I began doing some consulting work with Xavier basketball, Dayton basketball. And in 2017, the Indiana Hoosiers called me. And at that time, it was a basketball school. And I walked down on Assembly Hall floor. I looked up at those national championship banners and I said, you know, I may never have an opportunity to coach at a university like this. So I made the decision to go to Indiana, spent the last 8 years there, and then God opened this door at D1. So I'm super excited, humbled, and thankful to be here. And I owe you a huge amount of gratitude for that opportunity.
We want to say thank you for coming. We are fired up. How did, got to hit something personal right out of the gate.
Oh, yeah.
How did it feel to watch Indiana win the national championship in football? How did that feel for you?
Unbelievable. You know, again, living in Bloomington, you get a feel when you go to Indiana University, like this is a basketball-rich school, right? You have Bobby Knight there, again, all those national championships, and much respect to the football coaches there because I knew that staff, I knew some of the players, but typically, you know, people want to talk about basketball there, right? Even during football season in September, you know, the front page of the sports section was typically talking about basketball. And since they hired the guy named Curt Cignetti, he brought in a new swagger, confidence, and now they're national champs. So I tip my hat to everybody involved in that program.
Man, it's amazing.
It really is.
And when I talked to you, I think that the night of the game, and I think you were saying if they win, what happens in Bloomington? You were like, man, they're gonna tear the streets up.
Yeah, I said down Kirkwood Avenue is the street that runs right down the middle of campus, and I said they will tear Kirkwood Avenue up. They did. They were hanging off the poles and hooping and hollering. It was a pretty cool scene.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey, I want to jump in right into your expertise. You talked about training guys for the NFL Combine. And currently, right now, we have a ton of athletes hoping to get into a camp, hoping to go to the NFL Combine, hoping they make a team. When you look at these NFL athletes or these NFL hopefuls, what are like the 1, 2, 3 things that you're like, man, I want to make sure they have when they leave this program here at D1?
Well, great question. And I'll tell you, the 8 years I was at Indiana University, I really miss combine training. You know, I love my job there, but I always, at this time of year, January and February, I thought to myself, like, man, I really miss training those guys for the biggest job interview of their life. That's what the NFL Combine is, right? That's what you went through when you were coming out of Tennessee. That's why D1 was built originally. It wasn't for the adult athlete or necessarily the youth athlete. You started D1 because it was an NFL Combine training business. And to answer your question, when the players walk out of this facility, I want them to feel that they made the best decision of their life to come to Nashville, Tennessee, and train with us for the Combine. I want them to be confident, number one, in every drill at the Combine. Number two, I want them to be in the best shape of their career. And number three, I want them to be the best version of themselves. If a 4.6 40 is the best version of them, then I'm at peace with that. And so those are really the 3 things that I would ask, you know, as a player leaves here.
Yeah. So I'm going to like double click down in that and go like, what is a week, a day, a drill? What does it look like to really hone in to become the best version of yourself?
Man, it's a constant grind, and it's for 8 weeks, and it's 2 training sessions a day. It's recovery at night. It's nutrition. It's sleep. It's hydration. It's interview skills training. It's mental performance training. It's for some guys that are here training with us, the character studies, the Bible studies that we do. And it's really just preparing them, like I said, for one shot.
Yeah.
They get one shot to run the 40-yard dash. And hours and hours and hours of training, your stance, your start, your first step. And you've got to be able to put your best foot forward in front of all 32 NFL teams. So when our players step out on the turf, I want them to feel very confident in the work that we've put in.
When a guy comes here and he's working on those drills, I know one of the biggest things is being able to perform not with your helmet on or your shoulder pads or run plays. You're actually more like a track athlete where it's just you. It's not a team out there, it's just you. And so that can cause a lot of anxiety. That can cause a lot of nerves, a lot of fear. And as we both know, anxiety and fear don't usually produce the best results. So how do you coach athletes to perform in that moment when it's an individual in front of a crowd?
Great point. If you think about the NFL Combine, right, you think about every scout, every coach, every GM is right there on the 40-yard dash line, or they're watching you in the pro agility, or they're watching you bench press. And that's not comfortable. As a matter of fact, it's really uncomfortable, and fear could certainly set in. So some of the things that we like to do here is sometimes I'll stop the entire session and I'll call one guy out and I'll make him get down and run a pro agility in front of everybody. And we'll be videotaping that just to put them on the spot, right? And another thing that we do is we bring in a mental performance coach who helps these guys with performance anxiety. You know, a lot of visualization and breathing techniques that we'll teach them so that, yes, they're running good times in training, but we want you to run good times when it counts. And that's when the NFL scouts has their watch out and the head coach is watching you.
Yeah, so get granular there. So a parent out there who's listening to this is like, man, my kid's getting ready to go run for a UA Next camp or is getting ready to come get verified their times. Like, what are 1 or 2 or 3 things that a parent could tell their kid to do to really make sure they're on point?
Well, great question. And I'll say this, these high school kids that are going to exposure camps, you can get great exposure or you can get exposed. And you'll get exposed if you go up and you run a bad time in any of these speed or agility drills. So I would say first and foremost, make sure your athlete is coached up on the proper way to run the 40-yard dash, the proper way to run the pro agility, the proper way to do a vertical jump. I've been to so many of those camps and those clinics, and the athletes are put in a bad position because they just don't know how to run them.
Yeah, I've seen that before. Like what's give me like if you're watching a kid run a 40-yard dash, like what's one thing to make sure he does really well?
The first thing that I notice when I'm watching a young athlete run the 40-yard dash is when they put their foot up to the line, if they put the same arm and same leg down on the line, that shows me they have not been coached properly and they're going to run a very, very poor time. So the first thing you got to understand is, hey, it should be opposite foot, opposite hand up on the 40-yard dash line. That's just, speed training 101.
Yeah. So, a lot of these guys have come out of these big programs. They've had great strength and conditioning coaches, and they come here and they're really trying to hone their craft. What's the difference between a kid that's, an athlete that's at a big time school in a conditioning program versus like when they come here? I feel like for the most people, they would think they should know it all, right? They've been running drills. They've been in this big program. And then you and I know different. When they come here, a lot of times they don't know. What's an athlete going to experience when they come in here that maybe they haven't gotten at the big time program?
Well, I'll say this, being a strength and conditioning coach in college myself, there are some really, really, really fine coaches out there who are training athletes at the highest level, and they're getting them big, they're getting them fast, they're getting them strong. But the difference in combine training is this: we're training the athletes to be more efficient in their movement. I tell our guys all the time, I don't know if I can get you faster in 6, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, but I can make you more efficient. And if I make you more efficient, then you're going to run a faster time. So for example, when we run the pro agility test, a lot of these guys in a 20-yard shuttle will take 18 to 20 steps. By the time our guys leave the facility at the end of February, they're running the pro agility in 12 steps. So we take away 8 steps, which in turn is going to help them run a much faster time. At the NFL Combine, while I was training at Ignition, we were blessed to train Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce is a future Hall of Famer with the Philadelphia Eagles. When he came in, all the scouts, even the coaches in the NFL said, Clif, he's just too small to play center in the NFL. He went to the Combine, and, he wasn't the tallest player. He weighed around 278. But man, when he went out and he ran his agility drills and he ran his 40-yard dash, he broke an all-time record of 4.18 in the short shuttle pro agility. That beat any running back that year that was there. That record still stands to this day. Sam Acho was a defensive lineman that I trained that broke the all-time record in the L-cone drill. It wasn't because I made them faster. It was because I made them more efficient in their movement, and therefore they tested very, very well.
What everybody wants to talk about is the 40-yard dash. How many steps does an average athlete typically take? And then what, in the same way, like what are we trying to get them to?
Yeah, great question. The fastest players you see at the Combine in Indianapolis are guys who are going to run that test in 17, 18, 19 steps. We want our guys to get 20 or less, right? But in order to do that, you've got to master the start, the first 5 yards, then the next 10 yards. That's everything. It's the stance and the start. If they can figure that out, then they'll have a chance to run a really, really good 40 time. So that's why we spend so much time here, especially the first 3 to 4 weeks of training, just mastering their start and their stance.
When you think about all the guys you've trained, hundreds of guys that have gone on and played, the way I like to think about it is, speed is power times length, right? And times frequency.
Yep.
Right. And so when you're thinking of that equation, Jason Kelce looks a little different than a Luke Kuechly, right? Like two different, like one might have a ton of power, one might have a little bit more frequency or something like that. When you think back on the athletes that you've trained, like who popped off the page when they came walking in that you're like, man, that person really, really had a ton of power or a ton of length or...
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, speed is stride length times stride frequency plus force production.
Yeah.
And if you've got all 3 of those, you have a chance to run a really, really good 40 time. Sometimes I get athletes in and they have great frequency, they have great turnover, but their stride length is kind of short, right? So for us, we train every athlete, but we don't train every athlete the same way. When we're breaking down these guys' 40-yard dash technique, we're looking at the biomechanics. We're looking at a lot of film. And sometimes we get track guys who ran track in high school. And typically, those have been my fastest guys, right? You can just see they know how to sprint. But then you get some guys who are bigger, heavier guys, to your point, that have great power, right? We're looking for the combination of both. So, you know, one year we had a guy named Mike Mitchell, and Mike Mitchell is the highest player drafted, not invited to the combine. He went to the top of the second round. Top of the second round. Think about this. He wasn't an all-conference player. He had no combine invite. He had no all-star game invite. And he went top of the second round. And I'll never forget it because when they drafted him, the Oakland Raiders drafted him, Mel Kiper was stunned and he didn't have any film on him. So here we are on ESPN and they're saying, who in the world is this guy? We don't have film on him, right? He had a pro day at Ohio University where he had to run outside in like 38-degree temperatures, and he ran a 4.38 and a 4.40. Jumped like a 40-inch vertical jump. And then they went to his film and he had great film. And he was a starter for over a decade in the NFL. And I get so proud of that because a lot of the guys that we're training here, even this year at D1, these are more like late round free agent type players. And I'll never forget what you told me is like, hey, we want to train those guys that just want to get a phone call and get invited to camp. And the reason we love those kind of guys is because they're so thankful. They train with gratitude. They're humble. They're hardworking. And we know that some of these guys are going to have a testimony. They're going to have a story about draft day. And, you know, they're going to come back one day and talk to our draft prospects that are training at D1.
That's awesome. I get fired up. I was one of those guys just hoping for that phone call, you know. So one of the things I love about Combine time is the stories that come around it. And sometimes the stories aren't, happening inside the gym. You know, there's some, there's some good fun ones throughout the years. But man, you shared a story with me about an athlete. Man, they didn't make a good decision. And when you were down in Florida, I don't know if you're open to sharing that on camera, but man, I'd love if you shared that because I just think it shows your heart, it shows the heart of the business and what we're here for.
No, I'd love to share the story because that story changed my life. It changed me as a coach. In 2013, I was training a defensive tackle from Pittsburgh Panthers. His name was Chaz Alexa. And we had just finished a training session on a Saturday morning. All the guys were getting recovery. They were over by the ice tubs, the hot tubs. And I heard Chaz, kind of rallying some of the guys. And he was like, hey, let's go get on some jet skis this afternoon, go out and have a good time. Down in Naples, Florida, where I was training these guys. And sure enough, I walk over to them and I say, guys, that's not a great decision because we're only like a week out from the NFL Combine. I don't want you to get thrown off a jet ski, hurt your shoulder, not be able to bench press. So they're like, okay, coach, we got you. And I said, just do something like fishing instead. Well, that was around probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon. At about 6 o'clock that evening, I got a frantic phone call from one of the other players that was training with us. And he said, Coach Clif, I've got bad news. Chaz and some of the guys went out and they got on jet skis. And Chaz went way, way far out. The GPS lost him on the screen. And they have caught in search and rescue. And he's been missing at sea for over 2 hours. They found a jet ski, but he wasn't on it.
Oh my gosh.
So in my mind, in that moment, I thought about, man, I'm going to have to call Chaz's parents, his agent. I'm sure, ESPN's going to be here covering this. And this was on my watch. And then all of a sudden it hit me like, man, you're chasing results. You're chasing a 40-yard dash for this young player. You're chasing a vertical jump. You're chasing a bench press. And at the end of the day, you got to realize that the results don't matter in this business. The relationships do. And in that moment, I began coaching with an eternal perspective. In other words, coaching my athletes, knowing that one day they're going to die, one day I'm going to die, and we're going to go to each other's funeral. And what are they going to say about me at my funeral? What am I going to say about them at their funeral? And long story short, with 10 minutes left in the search, because it had gotten dark and we're in February in Naples, the water's really cold in the ocean in the Gulf. They actually found him floating and they got him in a helicopter. They flew him to the hospital and he actually ends up living, and he ends up living to tell the story. And a long story short, he ends up with the Miami Dolphins as a rookie. And I'll never forget, in August, HBO Hard Knocks was covering the Miami Dolphins that year. And I'm sitting there in the comfort of my home and I'm watching HBO Hard Knocks, and it says, tonight on this episode, you're gonna hear the story of Chaz Alexa lost at sea.
Oh,
So he goes on to share this story. And ultimately, we're able to look back on it now as a lesson learned, but it changed me. It made me a better coach because it made me value the relationship with the athlete more than the result of that athlete.
Yeah, I love that because, one of the things, like my heart in coaching is more about like caring for that person and caring for the athlete beyond the result. Like the result's secondary. Because, we have a little saying around here that, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. And you got to care for that person beyond football, beyond the performance. It's about the human being first, and then the performance is secondary. And so I love that story because, man, it just really brings out the heart.
Really does. And all of these guys, especially this year's combine training class, they could be anywhere training, right? They could be at any number of facility in the country, but they've chosen us, they chose D1, and they're trusting us. And as they're trusting us, I sleep great at night knowing that I gave them everything that I had, not to just make them the best athlete, but the best person that they could be.
I love that. While we're on that topic, I think one of the things that pops off the page to me is your personal development. You shared with me a story, and once again, if you don't want to share it on air, totally cool, but you shared with me a story about you had a God moment when you were a strength and conditioning coach, and it changed your life, and it made you who you are today. I don't know if you're willing to share that story when you were driving back from the facility, but
Yeah, no, I'd love to share it because you know what? One thing about me, I'm vulnerable and I have a testimony, and I'm willing to share that testimony, maybe to help somebody else that's out there.
Yeah.
But early in my career, coaching was my God. It was the most important thing in my life. It was number one. It was above my family. It was above my faith. It controlled my life. And that left me in a very dark place. And while I was in that dark place in 2008, alcohol had really taken over my life. I had really become, addicted to drinking and just really struggling in my marriage, in my faith. It was even affecting me in my career. And I'll never forget, on Halloween night, I was coming from a party up in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area. At this point in time, I was working with the Cincinnati Bengals, and it was about 2 a.m. I had drank way too much. I had a 12-pack of beer next to me in my vehicle that was open, and I was swerving, and a state cop pulled out behind me on the interstate. And as he was following me, I remember looking in my rearview mirror and seeing my Bengals coaching tag. And I thought to myself, like, if I get a DUI here, there's a chance that I could lose my job. This is really going to affect me. And I also just knew deep down inside, like, man, I'm in a bad place. So I cried out to God, and I said, God, if you spare me of this DUI, I'll never drink a drop of alcohol again in my life. And in that moment, the state cop literally did a U-turn in the median, went the opposite direction. I took the beer, I threw it out on the pavement. I can still hear the bottles breaking on the interstate. And by the grace of God, that was the last night I drank alcohol. I'm 17 years sober today.
that's awesome, man. I love that. I love that. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You're not drinking, but you did litter. So, you did litter,
I did.
No, man, I love that because I think, to me, a lot of times, especially, as we're talking with parents and these athletes out there, you get so attached to who you are on the playing field? Or are you getting offers? Or are you the star player? Or all those things? And I'm guilty of it. I was there as an athlete. And I think when you realize your identity is not that, that's just what you do, it's freeing. What I say all the time is like, man, if you care more about the sport than your kid, or, you know, if your kid cares more about the sport than his life, like, or what he's doing, then, man, you're in the wrong. And you got to let go, because when you do, when you let go of that attachment, you actually play better. I know that's what you coach when these guys go to the combine.
Yes.
It's just, hey, you've done the sets and reps. Now it's time to just go.
Yes. And be free, to your point. And being free is simply like, my identity is not my 40-yard dash time. My identity is not my vertical jump. My identity is not me as a football player, right? My identity, in my belief, is that you are a child of God, right? Who loves you and cares for you deeply. And then under that, obviously, he's giving you a great ability to play a sport. He's giving you a talent, right? And what you do with your talent is your gift back to God.
Yeah, that's awesome. And look, you don't forego the weight room at all, do you? As a coach, I think you got to lead by example a little bit here. You know, what did you do on the bench press? You did 225. How many did you do the other day?
I did 20 reps on the 225.
20 reps. I might have to go try to hit 21. I don't know. You know, as you're still staying in shape and still doing the things, what do you do these days to like lead by example in the weight room?
Yeah, well, you know what? I never want to get away from fitness and strength training. Even now, as I'm 44 years old, like, I don't want to get away from my love that I found in high school, right? And so a lot of people, yeah, you lift weights in high school, maybe you play a sport in college, you're in good shape, and then all of a sudden you hit 30 years old and it's like, you know, I'm done with that, you know? It's more important for us to lift weights as adults, where we're at right now, at our age, than even it was when we were in our teens and 20s, right? And so for me, it's just doing what I love. It gives me a peace. I feel good. You release endorphins when you work out. You know, my goal is that, hey, I want to stay at this level. You know, even my body weight, where I'm at now, is kind of where I was like when I was a high school senior. And just even weight room numbers, like, I'm dipping a little bit because I used to hit 225 for 30, like when I was in my 30s. Now I'm hitting 225 for 20 as now I'm in my 40s. But my point is, I'm never going to get away from fitness, because that's what I grew to love in high school.
And look, you had players. You trained a player like Luke Kuechly. We were talking earlier about sometimes you got to jump in with them. You got to jump in with them because they need to see that, hey, an old coach can do it as well. Tell us about his work ethic, because he's pretty insane.
Yeah, I was never brave enough to jump in a workout with Luke Kuechly. He was on another level. He was a machine, and I truly say that because, you know, in the off seasons when I was blessed to train him in Cincinnati, where he's born and raised, and played high school football at St. X. You know, I got to meet him when he was in college. You know, he played at Boston College, and from the time he was a rookie, where he was the rookie of the year, and then after that became the defensive player of the year, like, he would come back every off season and we'd get together. Sometimes I'd even go on vacation, where he would vacation down in Florida, and I'd train him that week, you know, that he was down on vacation. But what was so unique about him is it didn't matter if he was working out with an offensive lineman, a cornerback, a wide receiver. I never saw him lose a sprint. Not once, not even when he was running against the receivers. And so that really stuck out to me, that he did not like to lose. And he competed in everything that he did.
Was he that fast?
He was fast. He was a 4.5 guy. But the thing about it is, he was a 4.5 guy every day that we ran sprints. Where some guys may go to the combine and, yeah, they run a 4.3 or 4.4, but then when we come out to train, they're going to coast at a 4.6 or 4.7. And so I'll never forget, one day he told me, like, Clif, I want to train in the weight room the way that I play on the field. And the way I play on the field is it's intense, right? It's not talking between sets. It's not just wasting time and laughing around. So he was very intense in how he trained. So I had to remove him from the NFL offseason group one year that I was training, because the intensity amongst the other guys wasn't there. And we say around here, iron sharpens iron. I started getting players coming to Cincinnati in the off seasons just so they could be around a guy like Luke Kuechly, because he made everybody around him better, even myself. I had to make sure I was on my P's and Q's because I never wanted him to beat me to the facility. I mean, this guy was
Awesome.
the standard each and every day, and that's why he was so good as an NFL player.
Yeah, I tell my kids all the time, it's like, you become who you hang around. If you want to go be a great worker and be a great athlete, go hang around those people, and they'll push you and make you better.
Absolutely. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. If you were friends with Luke Kuechly, and if you were training with Luke Kuechly, no question about it, you were getting better.
What do you think set him apart? Why do you think he had that? I'm gonna call it that ghost switch all the time.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, he was a great athlete. Another thing that he did that was unique is we never went like super crazy heavy on a barbell back squat. Leading into training camp, he always had a measurement that he had to hit before he would report to the Carolina Panthers, and it was a box jump. And so he had to hit a 60-inch box jump before training camp every year. 60 inches, that's how tall I am.
Yeah.
So he was sticking a 2-foot, 60-inch broad box jump before training camp. And he told me, and we agreed with this, it's like it showed him that his power was where it needed to be going into the season.
Right.
Whether it was his weight, his nutrition, like he was always dialed into that. But what separated him, I believe, is his rookie year when he got to the Carolina Panthers. I don't think he had a TV in his apartment. I think the only thing that he had in his apartment was a computer where he could watch film. His IQ was unbelievable. I remember when he came to Cincinnati and the Panthers played the Bengals, and Andy Dalton told me, the quarterback of the Bengals, Clif, he caught out 60% of our plays before the snap correctly based on our formation. So he was the best, not only physically, but also he had the IQ.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I would love to kind of go here, which is, you've trained a lot of athletes. You put a lot of guys in the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. You're continuing to do that. When you look 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, like what gets you like so excited and lit up? Like what makes you like go like, man, I want to go every day?
Probably just the relationships. I got like a text message this morning from 2 of my former NFL athletes that came through my combine training program like 12 years ago, and they bumped into each other at the airport. And they like text me, like, one of them is currently the defensive coordinator for Illinois football, right? And the other one's currently working for ESPN Sports Center, Aaron Henry and Sam Acho. And it's like they bump into each other at the airport, and like there's still friendship there, there's still relationship there. And then for them to text me, like, that to me is what really gets me fired up, is that it's a lifelong journey together. Like this combine training program that we're putting on right now, it's not like an 8-week program. This is a program that's going to affect athletes for the rest of their life, and we're going to build a strong relationship through it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've, as you know, at D1 here, we've had so many great athletes come through these doors that have become business partners. They own a franchise now, or they're part of our corporate company, like Tim Tebow, and a lot of guys out there. And I get super fired up about that because, as you know, I love the relationship side of this business. I feel like that's what you learn in the weight room. You learn how to grow together, which is really special.
Absolutely. When you're in the trenches and you're training together every day, man, there's a special bond that forms. And it's pretty cool because the first couple of weeks, these 20 plus NFL prospects that we've got training here, they're kind of in their shell, they're kind of quiet, but man, week 3, week 4 rolls around, man, these guys are like best friends. Yeah. They're hanging out, they're going out to eat together, and these will be lifelong friendships for these guys that are training together here for 8 weeks.
Clif, your occupation's being a strength coach, but you're also a family man. You got kids. How are you as a sports dad?
Well, it's a work in progress. You know what? After training hundreds and thousands of athletes, it's just so much different when you've got your own. I've got an 11-year-old son that's involved in football, basketball, baseball. I've got a 15-year-old daughter that's a freshman in high school that's playing basketball, and of course they're doing the travel, they're doing the AAU, they're doing the teams, and for me, the biggest thing that I'm trying to teach my two kids right now is that it's about being a good person first and a good athlete second. So I'm trying to instill in them like how to be coachable, body language, right? Like, that's the body language tells you everything, right? When things are good, when things are bad, hitting on that. Obviously, I want them to be successful in their sport. Um, but I'm also realistic in a sense that, man, it's hard to make it to be a D1 athlete. If you want to be a pro, it's really hard. Like the numbers are stacked against you. So I will never crush my kids' dreams, and I want them to dream big dreams. At the same time, I know sports is teaching them character, and that's what I'm most concerned with.
What's one thing that you know your kids should do as a strength and conditioning coach, but that you have a hard time getting them to do?
Hey, you know what? Like even for my wife, like I would be considered maybe an expert, right? A performance expert, a strength and conditioning expert. And when I'm trying to coach up my son or my daughter or even my wife, sometimes it's like, hey, you're dad, I'm going to listen to my coach at school or I'm going to listen to my personal trainer. So, you know, um, with that being said, the one area that I really try to focus on with both of my kids is their yearly training calendar. I feel like young athletes are really missing the boat when they look at a 12-month calendar. And the reason I say that is having worked in college football, having worked in college basketball, having worked in the NFL, and then also training all these high-level athletes, everybody has an off season. Everybody has 3 to 4 months where they can kind of get away from the sport, put the ball down for a moment, and really just work on their strength, work on their speed, work on their flexibility. And what I see at the youth athlete level is just this vicious cycle of no off time, no time to really hone in on your strength, your speed, your stamina. You're just constantly involved in the sport. So my encouragement to parents out there is really look at your kids' training schedule. Look at that 12-month calendar. When do they have 3 months to really dedicate to the weight room? And also, I would say many young athletes that I see and that I deal with, they have 4 and 5 different coaches they're working with. Basketball, for example, you got your basketball coach at school. You got your AAU coach. You got your basketball skills trainer. Then you may have a performance coach. And if those 4 people are not communicating at a very high level, then the athlete is going to have issues down the road, overuse issues. I say this all the time. When I was at Indiana University as the men's basketball strength coach, when we got a freshman on campus, his body was already broken. What I mean by that is the tendonitis, the ankle issues, the foot issues, the low back issues, just from overuse over their over their youth playing career.
Yeah, it's a great point. I just really looking at that calendar. So when you look at a calendar, let me drop in, like double click down on that, is when you look in it, you got basically a 3-month window depending on what sport they play. What about the rest of the year? What about the other 9 months? Like how does your training incorporate into like in season?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, if you're going to spend 3 months in the off season, you're going to spend the money, the time, the hard work to increase your strength. You don't just want to quit for 9 months and say, hey, I'll get back to that next year. You want to continue to try to maintain your strength levels as a youth athlete, even during the season. So that could look like 1 to 2 training sessions per week, and they could be 30 minutes total, but you never want to neglect training your body. The thing that I say to our athletes all the time, your body is your business, right? And if your body is your business, even as a young athlete, you only get 1 set of feet, 1 set of ankles, 1 set of knee, 1 set of hips. So you want to make sure you're taking care of that even at the very early age.
That's really good. What about when you were at Indiana, training the training the basketball guys, how many times in season would they train?
Yeah, great question. We would go 2 days a week for the entire team. We would go 3 days a week for the guys who weren't playing a lot of minutes, right? And so we had guys who weren't playing a lot of minutes that could actually get stronger during the season. But the guys that were getting heavy workloads, they would work out 2 days a week, total body. The workouts would be 30 to 40 minutes total. And we were able to maintain our strength levels throughout the course of the season.
That's awesome.
So tell me a little bit about Indiana basketball. You trained a ton of great athletes there. Tell me a few of the guys that you trained and how were they in the weight room and on the court? And I know y'all were getting the greatest talent out there, right?
Yeah, no, it was great because, Indiana attracted high-level basketball players. So the McDonald's All-Americans, the 5-stars, that's who you're dealing with there. And so I was blessed to have, Trace Jackson Davis, who was a first-team All-American his senior year. He holds the all-time record block shots and rebounds at Indiana. He currently plays for the Golden State Warriors. And he was special because he was a lot like the Luke Kuechlys in terms of physical dominance, like, the strongest guy in the weight room. Although he was 6'10", he had the strongest legs on the team, right? The following year had Jalen Hood-Schifino, who was a first-round pick to the LA Lakers. He was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Very similar. When he walked in the door as a freshman, as a 5-star, he was already 215 pounds, right? 6'6". I mean, he looked the part. This guy was physically put together, and it translated to the court. One of my last years there, we had a player named Khalil Ware, who was a 5-star and a McDonald's All-American. And he was a first-round draft pick to the Miami Heat, was on the all-rookie team last year for the Miami Heat, and is playing at a very high level. Now, this guy was 7 foot, right? And you're training these 7-footers, and it's like, man, I train every athlete, but I don't train every athlete the same way. So he wasn't doing all the things that the other guys were doing in the weight room. It was more one-on-one and more structured. But what I remember about him forever is we played Ohio State, and we got beat on the boards pretty bad that night. And they had a big center that got like 20 rebounds. And Khalil came to me right after the game, not like the day after or 2 days after, right after the game. And he came to me and he said, Coach Clif, I need to do more. And so from that point on, the rest of the season, he would come in extra. Even if we were on the road, he and I would meet at the hotel lobby, go to the hotel weight room, and do extra. And he's continued to develop his body. He's continued to put on lean muscle mass, and he's playing at a very, very high level right now for the Miami Heat. So the lesson in that is, even if you're a 5-star, even if you're a high-level college prospect, you can never be satisfied. You always have to find a way to get better. And he felt like through the strength training program that he was able to be more physical and get more rebound.
So you train a lot of these elite basketball players, and now you're training football players. What's the difference in the style of training in the weight room for a football player versus a basketball player or a soccer player, for whatever sport that might be?
That's a great question, and a question that I get all the time, because I have been blessed to train high-level soccer, high-level football, high-level basketball, high-level baseball. And every sport is a little different when it comes to the energy system, right? Football is a sport where you're going to burst and you're going to go for 5, 6, maybe 7 seconds. Then you're going to get 35 seconds to recover. So the training program as a strength coach and a conditioning coach that you design can mimic that. Basketball is much different, right? You don't have an offense in basketball and a defense like football where you can sub in and out. Basketball is an up and down sport. So that energy system, right? That energy system means you have to train stamina. You have to be in great shape because, you get timeouts, you get foul shots, but otherwise the game isn't really stopping. And so I would say the biggest thing is the conditioning changes, but what doesn't change, what still remains the same is stronger, faster, better. I don't care if you're a soccer player, a baseball player, a basketball player, a football player. The baseball player, they're timing the 60-yard dash now. That's what the NFL combine is. The money drill is the 40-yard dash. The money drill in baseball is the 60-yard dash. The money drill in the NBA combine is the vertical jump. So they're still measuring athleticism at every sport. So that's what is consistent across the board.
Cliff, I get so excited about the future for these combine athletes, and you have so many great stories of past players that, man, they just burst onto the scene and went on to have a 10-year career. You know, you're seeing some young guys come right in right now, like some that have a draft grade, some not have a draft grade. Who's kind of standing out in your eyes these first couple weeks that you're like, man, that's a sleeper. They might make a camp. They might have a great career.
Well, you know what? I'll just kind of highlight the guys that we've had play in all-star games recently, because every guy that we've had in an all-star game has done very well for themselves. The first guy that I think of is Landon Robinson. This guy played at Navy. He was a first-team All-American. You know, he was on the freaks list by Bruce Feldman to begin the season because of his numbers in the weight room. He's a 700-pound squat, 465-pound bench press. Expect him to test very well. But I guess what the scouts are questioning is his size. He measured 5'11 3/4, just a shade under 6 foot as a defensive tackle. So a lot of NFL teams are questioning his size right now. But I trained Geno Atkins, who was a Pro Bowl D tackle that was just over 6 foot. I know Aaron Donald wasn't, you know, much taller than 6 foot, 6'1", and this is kind of a guy that would remind me of those guys, and I can't wait to see what NFL team is going to bring him in, the impact that he can have. Another guy is Pete Niagara. He's at University of Louisville. He anchored their offensive line. He was a leader on that team. He's a center, but he's tested out very well on all the evaluations we've done here at D1, and I know he's got the film to back it up. So I know an NFL team's going to get a great player in him. We had a couple players playing the American Bowl recently. Eli Blakey, he's a senior safety that led all safeties in the nation in tackles this year. 6'3", 205, very smart. I'm excited about him. And then Daniel Rickert, who is a Nashville kid that went to play at Virginia after his first 3 years at Tennessee Tech. And he had a great year, I think 7 or 8 sacks for Virginia, and he's going to be a great tester as well.
How have you seen the NIL world shift, kind of combine training? You know, because it used to be these kids, that's their payday. You know, now they're getting paid in college. How has it shifted the mentality?
Yeah, well, I could tell you the NIL, you know, you can walk out in our parking lot right now and you can see some of these guys are driving very nice vehicles. You know, number one. Number two, some of these guys are paying for their own training. Think about that. Like, you used to have an NFL agent who had to pay for your hotel, your training, your meals. A lot of these guys now, they can fund it themselves. So not only did they get a college degree, but they also got paid very, very well. And those are two of the blessings that I would say. Obviously, I still feel like that guys are hungry to get to the NFL and to get that paycheck, especially the guys we're training, because most of our guys are late round or free agent type players. I like to call our group this year against all odds, because we have some odds stacked against us, but I believe in our guys, and you know, I do believe that they're going to get their opportunity.
I love that. What all, and this, we could probably use this if we do that event in May. So like when a player first gets here, this is way more than just working out. You're learning a lot. And I always think the combine training is like, it's a course. It's a course on how to be a pro athlete. And so what other than just how we're running the 40 and doing the pro agility and how to get stronger in the bench press, what else are athletes learning here under your tutelage?
Great question. I like to call it Operation 53. That's what I had titled my program for a decade, because we don't just want you to go to the combine and dominate. We don't want you to just go to the pro day and dominate. We want you to make the 53-man active roster. And in order to do that, you have to be a pro, right? Showing up on time, being the first one in, last one out, using your manners, studying, right? Studying the game, knowing the IQ. So we're bringing in former coaches in the NFL. We're bringing in former scouts. We're bringing in current and former players to teach these guys how to get inside the four walls of an NFL facility and to actually make it. And that's a big piece to it, is that we want these guys to get to an NFL team and continue to come back here in the off seasons and train with us.
Clif, thank you so much for being here, man. Really appreciate it. That was an awesome conversation. We'll see you next time here on the Turf, powered by D1.